welcome to AYP Live, where we bring you conversations with inspiring people who, like many of us, have zigzagged their way through life and come out the other side with purpose, grit, and a few more stories to tell. Today's guest is Ally Begg, and some of you might know him as a former boy band member in Bad Boys Inc., one of the UK's early 90s pop exports with chart success and a record deal with A&M. Others might know him from the world of football broadcasting, where he's worked with Setanta Sports, MUTV, ESPN in Singapore, and beIN Sport. Or maybe you've discovered him more recently on YouTube, where his channel ABtv is building a loyal fan base hungry for stories of Scottish football's golden age and maybe some content on a recent Scottish Cup win, which between Ally and I, I'm sure might be coming up in conversation later on. But behind the highlight reel, Ally's story is one of total reinvention. He's gone from pop star to media pro to entrepreneur, launching his own PR consultancy after decades in front of and behind the camera. He's also faced and overcome significant health challenges that put everything in perspective. He grew up just outside Aberdeen in Newborough and even trialled with Burnley and Blackpool. And it's that love of the game and of storytelling that ultimately pulled him back into the spotlight, but this time on his own terms. So, whether you're figuring out your next career move or starting a business, this one is definitely for you. So let's get into it and get Ally on the show. How are we, mate?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. How's the weather going in Austria just now?
It's been awful today, but we've had the most sensational weekend. It's been really, really hot here. Thank goodness we had a huge thunderstorm last night, which cleared the air, so it cooled down a wee bit. But from tomorrow, it starts to get really hot again. So the summer's well and truly here, Ross.
Smashing. Well, I just want to kind of get things kicked off, Ally. Let's start with the early days, shall we? So, like myself, you're a fellow Ellen Academy alumni. Brilliant. And you grew up in Newborough, just outside Aberdeen. You had trials with Burnley and Blackpool. Was football your original dream?
Yes. It's all I ever thought about doing. It's all I wanted to do. I started playing really after moving to Newborough from Holland. So we moved here in 1979. So my dad got a job out of Dice Airport. My dad always worked in aviation. So he moved the family over from Holland, where we grew up as youngsters. My brother was born there as well. And that's when I really started playing football at Newborough Mathers Primary School. And then once I got to Ellen Academy, started playing for the school team there. And from there, I just progressed to playing boys club football. So played for Octor Ellen Boys Club. That was my first boys club.
Yeah.
And then started finding myself playing for boys club in the city. So I played every Saturday, every Sunday, trained just about every night as well. And it's all I wanted to do. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of my heroes at Pittodrie. And I put my life and my heart and my soul into it, trained really, really hard, because I just couldn't really see what else I wanted to do. Academically, I wasn't very clever. So I just had no idea what I could do. And football for me was the only path that I wanted to go down.
Yeah. So tell us, how did Bad Boys Inc. come about? You know, how did you go from aspiring to be a footballer to then being in a boy band signed to a major label? Now, I'll put, just in case some of the viewers don't know what band. Don't worry, I chose the picture. Nice as well, Ally. Don't worry, because just for the viewers, he hasn't seen the picture I've chosen yet, but it's a nice one. Don't worry. I'll just put it up.
So I went from, so I didn't make it as a player. Oh, that one's not too bad. Do you know that picture was taken in the Blue Peter Garden at the BBC studios in London. We were on Blue Peter that day, and they took us out into the garden to get our photographs taken. That actually wasn't long before we split up. That was only a few weeks before we split up. So that was taken, I think, round about December or January 1995, I think, if my memory serves me correct.
So who's the young man on the right there?
I know, right? Fresh-faced, jewellery, typical 90s hair. Look at that denim shirt.
I know.
It's gone back in fashion these days, mate.
It all goes in circles.
So yeah, I just, to be honest with you, the band was nothing but pure luck on my part. I didn't make it as a football player, which I was absolutely devastated about. I had no idea what to do after that. I really felt lost for a good couple of years, lost my love for football as well. And I decided that I wanted to move away from Aberdeen. I wanted to see what else was out there. And by this time, I was already working in the town. So I was working at the Bonaccord Baths as a lifeguard. And I was getting my hair cut at a salon called Ashoka. And I'd been going there for years. And they had a Scottish hair show, which they competed in every year down in Edinburgh. And I got spotted by a Japanese modeling agency. And they invited me down to London to have a meeting. And the lassie wanted to send me to Tokyo, but she wanted to see if I could get into an agency in London to basically start building a portfolio, which would obviously then help me get work if I ever went out to Japan. So a good friend of mine at the time, he was set to move to London to go to university, but he was also modeling at the same time. And he was in an agency called Models One. So Martin and I went down to London and we spent 2 days literally banging on the door of every single model agency that was around at the time. And I got rejected by every single one until the very last one that I went to see. And they were called Lorraine Ashton IMG. And they took me on. And then from there, I progressed to Models One. So Models One eventually took me on, which was huge at the time, particularly for my career. And when I got signed to them, my career really started to take off and I was doing really well. And then out of nothing, I get a phone call from the agency telling me that a record producer had seen my photograph and wanted to meet me. So it just so happened that his studio was at the end of Chiswick High Road, which is where I also lived. So I jumped in the bus, went down to his studio, met this guy, but I confess it wasn't really made clear to me what I was going to see this guy about. So I was a little bit confused about it all. So when I went in to see him, he started to sell himself and how successful he had been with bands like Take That and the Pasadenas. And if he was trying to impress me, it wasn't working because I wasn't impressed at all. He was dropping all these names and I was just thinking to myself, he's just giving it the big one. So I really wasn't that bothered. And I still was really confused to why he wanted me there. So he started asking me a number of questions like, can you sing? I was like, no, of course I can't sing. The only time that I'd ever done any sort of singing was at football matches at Pittodrie, or if we used to go away to away games. That was my level of singing. Then he asked me if I could dance, and I said yes. I was very happy to dance. That was no problem because I used to love dancing in zigzags and the ministry and all these type of places. Yeah. So I loved all that. So dancing was no issue. And then just again, things started to really turn for the worse. He said to me, can you take your top off? And I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, no. And he's like, no, come on. He says, I need to see if your body is appealing enough for young girls. And I'm like, mate, this is just so wrong. No. Is that front door still open? And you haven't double locked it, right? And I made a beeline for it and got out of there sharpish. I remember getting outside and calling my dad. And he's like, was he inappropriate with you? I said, no, not really. He says, what did he do? I says, nothing really. He just asked me a couple of questions. Do you want me to come down and sort him out? And I'm like, no, Dad, it's all fine. Don't worry about it. You know, I can take care of myself. So as much as I went in confused, I came out even more confused. So Ross, to be honest with you, I completely forgot about it. I just cracked on with my life. Yeah. I went back to work, went back to my day job, and completely forgot about the meeting. And then fast forward, I don't know, it was probably 2 or 3 months, maybe not as long as that. Yeah. And I get a phone call to go back. And I must admit, this time I was a wee bit hesitant to go back, but there was something that was pulling at me. It was intriguing. And even though I still hadn't worked out why he really wanted to see me, because originally I started to think that he was just casting me for a music video or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I went back down to see him, and this time I was introduced to Matthew, Tony, and David, who had also just been cast to become members of this newly formed boy band called Bad Boys Inc. Mm-hmm. And that's when the penny dropped. That's when I had the light bulb moment. I was like, oh my God, this guy wants me to be in a boy band. And I'm just like, this is mental. This cannot be, this is a joke, seriously. So what happened was, Ross, and this is where it's all pure luck and pure chance. One of his good friends was a photographer, and his photographer, while he was out and about in London working, he went into Ms. magazine, who I had just worked for recently. And it just so happened that my modeling card was on the desk of one of the journalists. And he spotted it, asked if he could take it away, and basically went back to the producer and said, I think I found somebody for the band. How about this lad? So Ian obviously looked at my photo, thought that my image suited the band perfectly, hence why he called me down to the studios. And that's how Bad Boys Inc. became Bad Boys Inc.
There we go.
It's a nonsense.
I'm just laughing, Ali, because obviously my line of work as well, as probably a lot of people will know that are watching this, I'm involved in recruitment. I think if I had that kind of style of interview, and I don't think I'd last too long in the business, but...
Well, you won't get away with that now, not a chance. You know, when he said to me, take your top off, I'm giving it. What? Are you joking? Get a grip.
So, I mean, you've also mentioned there's a lot of, that was a lot of luck, was just getting you to that point. Now, the band also experienced chart success, major TV appearances across Europe. What was the actual day-to-day reality of being in the band? What was that like?
Very hard work. We knew from day one that the product that was being produced on our behalf wasn't great. So it almost made us double our efforts to try and make the band become a success, because we were concerned that we thought we could build a fan base. We didn't have any issues about that. But what we were concerned about was people actually buying the records. So what we had to do was by building the fan base, you have to go on. I'm not sure if it's done so much these days, because a lot of stuff these days is done on social media. Obviously back then we didn't have social media. So we did it the old fashioned way. We went out on tour and we gigged all over the country, from the top of Scotland right down to the bottom of England. We could end up doing 5 or 6 gigs a night, starting in a university or a college in the afternoon, working our way to an under 18 nightclub, and then eventually ended up doing 2 or 3 gigs in over 18 nightclubs to the small hours of the morning. And we did that for a number of months to try and build a fan base. While that was going on, we had PR people from the record company and our own PR person, Carolyn Norman, who would put together a campaign to build our profile in the press. So we would do lots and lots of photo shoots with various magazines. A lot of it was introductory photo shoots to get our name out there, to make us publicly aware. And that was also extremely hard work. We were together in total for just over 3 years. In the public eye, about 2 and a bit years. And in that time, I can count on one hand how many days I had off. The workload was insane. We could work up to 14, 15, 16 hours a day easily, 7 days a week, depending on our schedule. But we made the decision to do that because we wanted to build a fan base and we wanted to get our records into the charts. We also went on a bit of a charm offensive. It's very important that in the industry, you remain humble, you keep your feet on the ground so that people like you. Because if they like you, they're going to ultimately support you. And that's what we needed. We needed the support of all the radio stations around the country. So we used to go and meet a lot of the regional radio stations, literally everywhere, and go in, do interviews, meet them, and in hope really that we would get our records on what was called playlists. And playlists had different categories. It could be, so for example, if you got onto the A list, you'd get played almost every hour. If you got onto the B list, you'd get played every 3 hours. If you got onto the C list, it's maybe every 5 hours. But you had to get on a playlist so that your record got played on radio. So the work was intense. And if we weren't gigging, if we weren't doing photo shoots, then we were in the dance studios and we were working on our routines. And it's something that I'm now very proud of, because we were very slick and we worked tirelessly. in the dance studios to make sure that our routines were polished, that we looked together in sync, that we looked good on stage, because we were very image driven, and the lads and I were very conscious of that as well. Yeah. So what we didn't want to do is just come across as like a bimbo boy band. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to make sure that we impressed everybody, not just from us being characters, but also our stage performances. They were hugely important to us. Yeah. So the workload was huge, Ross. It was exhausting. It really was.
It almost sounds like you liken it to when we went through like some lockdown. You know, when you're having to spend a considerable amount of time with the same group of people in a confined space. It must have, you know, caused a lot of friction and things. So I mean, when the band split, you did say that, you know, on the public domain, that you faced a difficult period financially and emotionally. What helped you move forward from that chapter?
There was a couple of wake-up calls for me. I drifted. After the band split up, I drifted for about a year because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was not at all bothered about staying famous, being a celebrity. I had no interest in that whatsoever. It wasn't for me. I wasn't made for it, and it wasn't made for me. So I know that a lot of people these days who have had a taste of fame, and for whatever reason they lose it, they try desperately to get it back. And I was in a very fortunate position that I had no interest to do that whatsoever. But in the position that I was in, it also made it very difficult for me to go and get a job. So for example, I was starting to run out of money. I had no money. You know, the band left me broke. So I was very conscious that I had a mortgage to pay, I had bills to pay, I had responsibilities financially, and I needed to get back to work. Thankfully, I got a couple of gigs doing personal appearances. I did a pantomime, which helped massively. So that got me through, but I needed to earn a living. And I would go to various retail outlets and ask them if they needed shop assistants or if they needed help at weekends. And the bemusement painted on the faces of these people when they saw me asking for a job is something that's never left me. People would say to me, why have you come in here looking for a job? You're a famous pop star. Oh, by the way, when's your next single out? And it was a huge source of frustration for me. Yeah. And it was becoming very difficult. So what I discovered by just a pure chance going to see my doctor, I wasn't feeling very well one day. I went to see my doctor. And he said to me, he said, I've got a question for you, just out of interest. He said, what time are you getting out of your bed in the morning? And I said to him, it depends really. If I fancy a run, I'll get up quite early. If I want to do some football training, I'll get up quite early. But if I don't have any purpose, I could lie in bed to 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And he says, what time do you go to bed? And I went, oh, past midnight. And he said to me, you're starting to get depressed. And I'm like, come on, he is peace, mate. I don't feel depressed at all. I think I have a strong enough character not to allow that to get to me. And he was like, well, I want you to go away and think about it. So I did. And it was a wake-up call. Yeah. Because why was I lying in bed? Well, there was a very simple reason why I was staying in my bed, because I had no purpose to get out of bed. Mm-hmm. I was shortening my day by staying in bed longer, which made me think that I didn't have to think about what I was going to do throughout the day. How was I going to fill my hours? And that was a huge wake-up call. So I went to the Coca-Cola Cup final with my family at Hampden when Aberdeen beat Dundee. And I had an experience, which again is I've never forgotten. I got a lot of abuse that day from a very small pocket of Dundee fans who recognised me and gave me a lot of grief that day. And when Aberdeen scored their second goal, I let rip. I just lost all control. I went mental. I went berserk. And I was shouting, I was screaming, I was trying to punch my way through to get to these lads. And fans were having to hold me back. My dad grabbed me, he held me back, and he held me quite close, very tight to him. My brother was there at the time and he was trying to comfort me. And I broke down and I couldn't stop sobbing. I was in a really bad way, and that the rest of the game completely passed me by. But it was in that moment that I decided, when I get back home, I'm changing my life. I'm going to get my life back on track, and I'm going to do whatever I can to get back on an even keel. And that's what I did. I came back to London. I got up the next morning. I went for a run. I went football training. I came home and I made a plan. Right, what am I going to do? And I put together a list of what I can do and what I can't do, and what I'd done previously, and could I use my previous experiences to help me find a job. So I'd been a health and fitness instructor while I was living in Aberdeen. So I thought to myself, let's see if I can get a job in a gym.
Yep.
And I did. I got really lucky that a very small gym, not far from where I lived, in a hotel just outside London, had a small private gym, and they needed an assistant. And they gave me the job. And it was only part-time to begin with, but honestly, Ross, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it got me out of bed. It gave me a purpose. I was back earning money. And yes, I had to have a few moments where people were making fun of me and having a go at me and all that kind of stuff. But I found tools to cope with that. And I found mechanisms to cope with that.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant for me. And it made me happy again. I wasn't bothered about the band anymore. I put the band to one side. I dismissed myself from the band. I almost pretended that it didn't happen. Never spoke about it. If people came in and recognized me, I would apologize to them and say that I think you're confused with somebody else. Yeah. So I completely distanced myself from the band during that whole period. And it helped me massively. But getting out of bed and having a purpose was a game changer for me.
Yeah, no, because I mean, I was also going to speak about the kind of next chapter, which probably a lot more people will know you for, as well as about sports broadcasting. So how did you get your foot in the door in that industry?
Again, very lucky. I just so happened to be in the right place at the right time. So I met this guy while I was in the band called Andy Sheldon. And Andy was a disc jockey on a radio station called Power FM, based in Portsmouth. And they broadcast to the entire South region. And Andy and I hit it off immediately. And then it just so happened that the two of us ended up doing pantomime together. So we became very close friends. And so fast forward a few years, Andy had sort of migrated from being a disc jockey to now being a television presenter. And he was working for a company called Granada Shop up in Liverpool. And Granada Shop was selling everything that was available in the Littlewoods catalogue. Do you remember the old Littlewoods catalogue?
Right,
yeah. So that's what we would do. So he called me one afternoon and he said to me, out of interest, would you like to come to Liverpool and do a screen test for us? Because we need a health and fitness advisor. We need somebody who can show the public how to use fitness equipment and the benefits of using it. I swear, Ross, I did not need a second invitation. I was on the next train out of Euston up to Liverpool Street. Yeah. And it was incredible. I did a screen test. I came through it. And before I know it, I'm working every Wednesday, every Friday, and every Saturday on the shopping channel, developing my skills first of all, as a guest. And then the producers asked me if I'd be interested to present the programs on my own. And that's where I really started to learn how television worked. Yeah. And that was my step into television, basically through Andy getting me up, putting me through the screen test, and then getting the gig. And then from there, I got spotted by a producer from Manchester United Television who came across to Liverpool for the week to see how the producers at the shopping channel worked, because MUTV had just commissioned Granada Television to produce a kids magazine show for MUTV. So Richard was out looking for a presenter, and it just so happened that I was there the day that he was in the office. We met, we hit it off. He asked me to come over and do a screen test for him, which I did, and I got the job. And that's basically that's where my sports broadcasting career started, really.
So what's the behind the scenes reality of working in sports media like? You know, you see it quite polished on the screen, but what's it like when the cameras are not rolling, or even when the cameras are rolling? What's the reality like?
It's a very difficult job because you are providing a service to the general public. That's how I always looked upon it. And it takes a lot of hard work, it takes a lot of research, and it takes a lot of due diligence to make sure that editorially you get your program correct. So you find the stories that you need to talk about. So depending where I worked and who I worked for would dictate how much time I was given to prepare my shows. I would say that 80% of the time, the most I was given was 2 days, 48 hours, which is not a great deal of time. So I'd be in the office, again, 10 to 12 hours a day, working with my assistants to put the program together. On top of that, you're liaising with your hosts to make sure that what you want to talk about on the program is aligned with their thinking as well. And then you find out who your guests are going to be. So I would then find out who the guests would be for the weekend show. I would then make sure that I would speak to them to see if they had anything interesting to say about a certain topic that I wanted to talk about, and to ask them for their advice, to ask them if there was anything that they particularly wanted to talk about. So there was a lot of research had to be put into it. Yeah. Once you put together your rundown, so your rundown is basically a blueprint for the program. Once that's done, so just so that people understand, the rundown is your Bible for the show. So from the minute you come on air to the minute you come off air, and everything has to be timed to the exact second. Yeah. So once the rundown is finalized and everybody's happy with it, you then start delegating the jobs of the editorial content that needs to be put together. So if you want a run of goals, or if you want particular analysis to put together, I would delegate those jobs to my assistants. They would go away and start putting that stuff together. I would then have to start speaking to graphics operators to say to them, right, I'm looking for a graphic on this topic. Can you help me with anything? And then again, you would delegate those jobs and those roles. As well as that, you've got all your other responsibilities on top of that as well. I very much, particularly when I was at BN, I like to sort of almost guide and advise some of the younger members of staff. I really enjoyed doing that. And I always made myself available if people wanted to come and talk, if there were any issues going on, if there were any problems going on, if they just wanted to have a cup of tea and a muffin, we'd go down and sit in the canteen and just chew the fat. And I really, really enjoyed that part of my broadcasting career. So it's extremely hard work. It's very stressful. Mm-hmm. You're managing, when I think about it, the teams that we had, particularly in Qatar, were quite small. I also had a very small team of people at ESPN in Singapore. So you have to manage these people and make sure that they're happy. They know exactly what they're doing. Communication is key. I know we're going to speak about that later, but communication is vital so that everybody knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah. I never wanted anybody to go away thinking, well, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing today. That was an absolute rule of thumb with me. Everybody knew exactly what they had to be done and when it needed to be done by. Yeah. So the way I used to look upon live shows, because I produce predominantly live studio shows, I went into it thinking that what I'm producing is a ticking bomb. Mm-hmm. And if that bomb was to go off, I have to react. And it's how I react to that bomb going off. And that was the most important thing, so that I was fully prepared to react to breaking news, mm-hmm. or if a major incident happened during a game, how do we react to it? And everybody had to be aligned. Everybody had to be singing from the same hymn sheet. And again, everybody had to be told exactly what we were doing. That was vital. I take great pride in the fact that when I worked out of the studio gallery, which is where the producers, the assistant producers, the director, your sound operators, your graphic operators all work from, I take great pride in the fact that we always had a very good operational gallery. Everybody knew exactly what they were doing. It was also a very calm gallery. I never raised my voice. Mm-hmm. I never shouted at anybody. I'd learned that very quickly in ESPN, to remain humble, just give clear instructions. If something was to go wrong, it's how you deal with it, it's how you cope with it, and it's how you move on.
that's
and
it.
that you don't dwell on it. It was vital that you do not dwell on it. If one of my assistants made a mistake, I would ask them to learn from it and move on as quickly as they could.
Yeah, that's good advice, Ally.
Yeah, Ross, I never used to give people a hard time because I could see that they were beating themselves up already. You know, I would have my say gently and make them understand that from my point of view, what happened was disappointing, but you're beating yourself up already. That's good enough for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, like for any of our listeners, Ali, that would like to break into sports media, where do you think they should begin?
So first and foremost, if you want to get into sports broadcasting, what I suggest very strongly is to go and do a broadcast journalism course at a university or college and learn journalism through broadcasting. Because at the end of the day, it's a news service that you're providing.
Yeah.
And editorially, you have to get that service correct.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that editorially, you convey the story in the proper manner and in a professional manner. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can learn on the job by doing that. I had to learn on the job by doing that. But I would strongly recommend that people go away and study broadcast journalism. Mm-hmm. I know that a lot of people who go onto YouTube and set up their own YouTube channels and they try and learn through YouTube. I absolutely have no issues with that, but be careful with it, mm-hmm. because sometimes you have to be very careful about what you say. You have to be very careful what you show, because a lot of stuff is licensed. Yeah. So if you go to university or college, you're going to learn about all of this. So that's where I would start. And I have to say, Ross, as mad as this sounds, and I know some people might frown upon this, and I know that some people have frowned upon this, the greatest education that I got was at the Shopping Channel, mm-hmm. because you have no place to hide. Yeah. It's where I learnt my trade. It's where I learnt my craft. And with shopping channels, like I'll give you the perfect example. When I first started presenting, because the shows are timed to the absolute seconds, you have to say goodbye at 0. So you're selling a number of products and you know that you're going to get, say, roughly 5 minutes on each product. Towards the end of the show, if I'm selling a pair of sports white nylon socks, and I have to fill for 2 minutes, there's no place to hide. No, it's not as if I can jump behind the desk or say to folk, right, that's us, thanks ever so much. And then you just stand there for 2 minutes giving it, all right, how's your father? It's just not happening. You've got to fill for 2 minutes. So I thought to myself, if I can fill for 2 minutes talking utter nonsense about white nylon socks that make sure you wash them at 40 degrees, turn them inside out so that you don't ruin the little motif. Make sure when you hang them up with a peg with the toes down, all that sort of stuff. And I thought to myself, well, if I can do this, then surely to God, I can speak about football for a couple of minutes, hopefully through some platform. So I would highly recommend folk to look at shopping channels as well, especially if you want to be in front of the camera, because it's a fantastic place to learn.
No, great advice. Thanks, Ali. I mean, I want to kind of move on now to the health issues that you've faced and how you've dealt with it, how you've moved on with it as well, and how you've been through a life-changing battle with ulcerative colitis. And as we were, just for the viewers, something I was speaking to Ali about just before we came on air. I'm kind of familiar with it as well. My mum's suffered from it since she was a young girl too. So, what happened, and how did that experience change your personal perspective on it?
It gave me a better understanding of what is truly important in life. Mm-hmm. I don't sweat the small stuff anymore, Ross. There's just no point.
Yeah.
All I care about now is providing for my children and giving them a platform and the tools to navigate their way through life until they become self-sufficient. At the beginning of last year, my kids nearly lost their dad, and I just can't let that happen. So I have to ensure that everything I do from here on in remains calm and peaceful. I don't allow chaos in my life anymore. This was very difficult for me to understand, and it was very difficult for me to accept that my condition was predominantly caused by chronic stress. I've always been very proud of the fact that I've never allowed myself to get overly stressed. I've always faced adversity head on. I've always dealt with it in the best possible way possible. So when I got told that chronic stress caused my illness, it was very difficult to accept. Yeah. Once I accepted it, I was at peace with it, and I started to understand it more. And I started to understand more about the chemical imbalance and how that affected me, and how where having too much stress in your life can increase this imbalance and start attacking parts of your body. And that was an eye-opener for me, because I've had to educate myself about my condition. Yeah. Because it came out of nowhere. I felt fine. I had never had any health issues before. The only serious surgery that I had in my life was when I broke my leg, and then I needed a knee replacement in 2018. Apart from that, I've never really had any health issues whatsoever. So when the condition was diagnosed, it was a complete shock. And then I had to try and navigate my way through it, which was very difficult. It was very challenging. For anybody that has got Crohn's disease or suffers from ulcerative colitis, they will know exactly where I'm coming from. It causes a huge amount of anxiety and stress itself, because unfortunately, the condition, I'm trying not to make this sound too graphic, it increases your toilet habits, let's put it that way. Yeah. And you don't get a great deal of time to go to the toilet, which then obviously causes a great amount of stress. So what I found myself was I almost became very reclusive, because I was too afraid to go out of the house, because I was worried that I might have an accident. Even taking the dog for a walk into the woods, I would get myself into such a state, because I'd be worried that I wouldn't get back to the house in time. So that in itself started to cause a lot of anxiety and stress. And then eventually I got so sick that I had to have my colon removed, my entire colon. And my doctor told me that it was the worst colon that she had seen in 25 years, which again really shook me to the core. Thankfully, I've come through it. I'm still very much in a recovery period. I've had a full reversal, so I had to wear a colostomy bag on my stomach for a number of months, which I also found extremely challenging and difficult. I found it difficult to accept that it was there, but eventually I came to understand that this was now part of me, that it saved my life, that it played a huge role in saving my life. That helped me, I have to say. And then thankfully, I was able to recover sufficiently where my surgeons and my supervising doctors did a full reversal on me. And they did a procedure called a J pouch procedure, where they removed the colostomy bag and they fitted me with something called a J pouch, which basically acts as an adapter inside your body. But because of that, I now only have a small intestine. So, which means that it's very difficult for me to digest food. I have to be very careful what I eat. I've had to completely change my eating habits. I've had to completely change my lifestyle. Yeah. I've had to completely change my way of thinking. And for doing that, I feel 100 times better. Yeah. And sorry, mate, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, well, that kind of leads on to what I was wanting to ask you next, Alan. I mean, during your recovery, what were the kind of biggest mental and emotional hurdles that you faced?
I didn't fully appreciate how close I came to dying. That was only really made very clear to me in the days after my colon was removed. And they sent a psychologist in, who at first I really did not want to see. I didn't want to see a psychologist. I didn't feel I needed to. But it was compulsory to send a psychologist in to see a patient if someone had come that close to death. Yeah. So eventually, just by gently opening up to her, she made me understand the severity of my condition and how close I came. So what it made me do was it just made me think of my children. Yeah. And I used my children as my tool to get better. I then decided that to get better, I needed to have a purpose. And I keep coming back to this word, but it plays a huge role in my life, Ross. Purpose is a massively important word in my life. Because at the time I was doing fine. I was freelancing. I was doing some sports broadcasting. I had just come back from Australia. I worked in the Women's World Cup down there. I was working for North Sound. I was doing my YouTube channels. I was doing lots and lots of different things, writing my books, which I really enjoyed. But I just felt there was something missing. Yeah. I felt that security was missing. I made a decision that I didn't want to work for anybody anymore because of my experiences in Qatar. I decided I was done. Sick and tired of working for narcissists. And I just didn't want it in my life anymore. I didn't want to be answerable to anybody anymore apart from my family. So I decided to study PR and communications. And PR and communications became my purpose to recover. So during my recovery, I went away and I studied through the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. And thankfully, I got qualified. So I gave myself a goal and I gave myself an ambition to achieve. Yeah. And I thought, if I set myself a goal, then that's going to help me with my recovery. But more importantly, it's going to give me a purpose.
Brilliant. And I mean, you've also alluded to just earlier that you try now not let chaos get into your life. So did the experience cause a permanent shift in how you approach work now and, well, life in general?
Yeah, completely. Like I said to you before, I don't sweat the small stuff anymore because it's not important. Yeah. I just don't see the point anymore. I take my life very steady now. I've slowed everything down. I'm not in a rush anymore. For many, many years, I was always in a rush. I was in a rush to get things done. I was in a rush to get my career moving. I was in a rush to get my YouTube channels working. I was in a rush to get my books written. I don't do that anymore. Yeah. I go at my own pace. And I find by going at my own pace, life has become an awful lot easier. And again, forgive me for repeating myself, but the only thing that matters to me now are my children. Yeah. And all I'm trying to do with them is give them a peaceful life, give them a platform, and make them understand that life is brilliant. Life is fantastic. Life is great. And I want them to be as happy. I want them to be deliriously happy. I know they're only 9 and 12 years old, but I just want them to be deliriously happy. That's all I ask for. Listen, I'm no different to any other parent. Let's be honest. Every parent wants their kids to be deliriously happy, of course. So I'm not exactly preaching to the converted here, but it's something that's very important to me. Yeah. So if I can see that they're happy, that makes me happy. So we try and keep peace and harmony within our household. I'm strict with them. Absolutely, I'm strict with them. They know right from wrong. I tell them if they've done wrong. We learn from it. We move on. I try my best not to raise my voice because I'm not a big fan of raising my voice. I let them know when they've done wrong. And I let them know when they've wound me up or they're doing my nutting. They know. But it's all about just finding a way to have peace. Yeah. Because if I don't, I'm going to get sick. Yeah. And if I get sick, that's what scares me.
Yeah. No, brilliant. And I just want to also now move on to, your YouTube channel. Also, the backdrop behind you there is what probably a lot of people will recognise now that's related to yourself. You launched your YouTube channel, ABtv. What inspired that project?
That really came from my blog page. So I launched a blog page in 2018. And the idea behind that was to interview ex-Aberdeen players, but really get deep into their souls about their time at Pittodrie. I used to really enjoy sitting and chatting to all the guests that used to come out to Singapore or Qatar and just chew the fat about their careers with them. I really enjoyed that. So I thought to myself, if I can turn this into a written presentation, I'm hoping that people will jump on board and also enjoy the stories that I was writing.
Yeah.
The blog page did really well. I was absolutely delighted with how it was going. And then unfortunately, I lost my job due to the pandemic. So because my ex-wife is from Austria, we had a home just over the border in Germany. So we decided to move the family here and settle here. And it was during that time that a lot of YouTube fan sites were starting to appear. But I used to cringe at them. I just, yikes, you know, like, seriously, is this where we're going with broadcasting? It was just awful. So I always shied away from it. I could never, ever envisage myself making a complete and utter tool of myself. I've been making a complete tool of myself for 25 years. I didn't need a YouTube channel to do it, you know. So, and then people would just say to me, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. You've got television production experience behind you. You know how to do it. And then I just thought to myself, do you know what? Let's give it a bash and let's migrate the blog page from written content to visual content came from, hence why we launched the YouTube channel.
Great. Because also a lot of people, generally ask me, like, on platforms like LinkedIn, etc., what kind of video should I do? What should I be speaking about? So for yourself, Ally, was there a particular video or moment that confirmed to you, hey, wait a minute, there's an audience for what I'm doing here?
Yes. I started to interview over Zoom ex-players about specific topics. So it was the anniversary of Gothenburg. So I jumped on with John Hewitt, and John gave me the most fantastic interview. And his emotion at the end when talking about his great pal Neil Cooper really brought it home to me that visual presentation is the way forward. And this type of interview, for me personally, is the way forward. This is the type of content that I think people want. Because what it was doing was, it wasn't just telling a story, but it was capturing in real time the true emotion of John Hewitt at the time. He broke down. He was hugely emotional when talking about Neil, and it was very touching. It was very humbling. And I just thought to myself, this is the type of content that I think people will enjoy. Then I spoke to Willie Miller about the day Aberdeen secured the league title when they beat Hibs at Easter Road, and spoke to him about the experience of that day, from getting up in the morning to going to bed that evening. And he took me through the whole day. And it was just a brilliant listen. Yeah. And to see him talk so emotionally about winning the title, and Fergie's little dance on the pitch, and jumping on Bobby Clark, and the fans' reaction, the way they beat Hibs on the day, having to wait for the Celtic score to come in. And I just loved it. And I was getting a huge kick out of interviewing these guys as well. Willie Miller's my hero. He still is. Yeah. And I love that guy to bits. And to be able to call him and say, would you mind doing this for me? And he says, of course I'll do it for you. I get a huge kick out of that. So it lifts my spirits, and it gives me the determination, and it gives me the ambition to do more. And that's where I just thought, okay, that's the light bulb moment. Let's now really go for this in a proper studio production. And that's what I'm trying to do with ABtv. I'm trying to make it more of like a magazine type show than just a sort of a straightforward chat on chat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think as well, when you're doing live shows like what we're doing just now, it's I've had a lot of people. This is the fourth one for AYP that we've just kind of reignited the channel again, and a lot of people ask me, how do you go around doing the research for people and things like that? So how do you, for ABtv, how do you approach the research and the storytelling behind each video that you produce for the channel?
So at the moment, I think I'm quite fortunate that I've got what I would call a theme for the channel. So we've got the preview shows and we've got the review shows. And what I do in the days leading up to the review show is I just trawl through the internet to find the stories, to find the information, to find something different that we can talk about on the show, to prepare myself for what I'm hoping people will enjoy on the show. Yeah. So I like to try and give as much information as I can. So it's all about researching and finding what will fit the program. So I'm always trying to improve my shows. I'm always trying to think of, right, what can we do next? How can we improve the product? And I'm literally doing that at the moment. I'm spending my summer months really working on new content and how to improve the production, how to improve the service, because I'm in a very fortunate position where my subscription levels have increased, my viewership has increased, I've got sponsorship obligation because I'm so humbled and flattered that people sponsor me on the channel, Craig International, Saltire and Quipco. I'm extremely grateful for it. So I have a responsibility to them as well to make sure that the service I provide is of the very highest standard. You know, we introduced Andrew Budge last year to do the analysis, and it's gone down an absolute storm, and I'm absolutely thrilled about it. And Andrew has elevated the show beyond anything that I ever first envisaged. And I'm so grateful to him for his insight. And he loves doing it just as much as I love doing it as well. So it's really worked out well for the two of us. But I'm always looking at ways to improve the service because I have a responsibility. Yeah. And what I don't want to do is just to get into a comfort zone. I never, ever allow myself to get into a comfort zone, because I think once you get into a comfort zone, you start making mistakes. Yeah. And you become lazy. And once you become lazy, people see right through you.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I would thoroughly recommend anyone to obviously watch ABtv, especially if you're an Aberdeen fan. It's really good, and you have very much worked on all. It's not always. I mean, at least we've had something to cheer about in the last little while with the Scottish Cup final. But we could probably speak about that for.
That's another podcast in itself.
I was just getting my voice back literally a few weeks ago, so it's like, but a common question I'm sure you're asked a lot, especially as a YouTube content creator, is what advice would you give to like a young professional looking to create content in a niche that they really love and enjoy?
Okay, I've really started to come to understand this in the past few months. And I really hope people understand where I'm coming from with this. Don't be tempted to use initially artificial intelligence to create your content. Create your content first, and then maybe think about AI or even chat GPT to enhance. Don't lose the power of having a creative mind. That's really important. And don't allow your brain not to think anymore. Because once you start to do that, your brain starts to shut down, and then you're in a whole world of trouble. Don't become a zombie. Use the power of your brain, because that's what it's there for. Yeah. I have seen more and more that people are using chat GPT and just chucking it out as it comes back to them. And I think that's wrong. Yeah. You must stay creative. It's really important, because if you are a creative person, it's what makes you. It's what's giving you your path in life. And if you start using an artificial intelligence to be creative on your behalf, what are you doing? I don't understand that. So look, I use it. Absolutely, I use it. But I only use it to enhance my content. Yeah. So I go away, I be creative, I put my writing together. And then if I struggle with wording or structure or flow, then I might jump on chat GPT. I'm very careful with the prompts that I give it and ask it, can you enhance this sentence for me? And I would say that 80% of the time it does. Yeah. But there is that 20% that it doesn't. And this is where I think people have got to be very careful with this tool, because sometimes it does give you wrong information. So don't take everything for gospel. You have to be very careful with it. Research is hugely important. Always research your own content, because what you're doing is you are putting that content out to the general public. And if your content is incorrect, it's going to come back on you, not chat GPT. You're the one that's going to get grief. Yeah. people don't need an excuse on social media these days to have a go at people. Unfortunately, it's become, social media has become such a horrible place.
Yeah.
It could be fantastic and it can be used to great advantages, but it's also a horrible place full of people who are just hate-filled.
Yeah.
Don't give them an excuse. So be very conscious of what you're putting out there. And at the end of the day, be responsible for your own content and your own research. That's the advice I would give.
Brilliant. Because I mean, I'll plug the second episode that we did when we interviewed a chap called Eric Doyle, who looked at the digital side of how to promote yourself. And one of the things that we discussed there was it's obviously like it's not a replacement, it's an assistant. And
Yes.
like you're saying there as well, Ali, that you don't want to be vanilla, because I think you can get lost in translation. You lose your personality as well, isn't it? Because
Yes.
I think on the LinkedIn platform, was it last week that with ChatGPT went down? I think a few people were laughing, going, "Well, I wonder where all the content's going to come this week then." But no, I mean that's the content I like to engage. That's why I love watching your channel. You can tell the effort you put into it. You can tell it's your personality that's coming through from it as well. And
Thank you.
What I'm wanting to kind of come to a closure now with the interview as well is to kind of look at what's the future hold for Ally. What's that look like? So in addition to ABtv, you've launched Ally Begg PR, your own consultancy. So what made you? I mean, it's a natural progression given your background. But what led to that decision?
I've always been fascinated by PR, and I've always been really interested in communication, particularly how I communicate to other people, particularly throughout my career. And as I mentioned earlier, it's something that I've been very proud of, is that I do think that my communication is something that I'm good at, that I'm strong at. But PR has been interesting for me because I've had to, over the past 30 years, no matter what domain I've worked in, I've had to deal with a lot of PR people, some absolutely fantastic and some absolutely horrific. And what I'm trying to do is, through my own experiences, slightly change the narrative. Because what I have found, particularly with my Accidental Popstar channel, is whenever I approach PR people to speak to the person that they're representing, I either get completely ghosted or I get some fob off, some pathetic excuse for this person not to come on my channel, when I know they've not even asked that person in question whether they would like to come on or not. They answer on their behalf. And I don't like that. I think that's false. It's a false indication of the subject matter in the first place. Yeah. So I get hugely frustrated when people don't answer my emails. I would much rather somebody tell me in good old-fashioned Scottish terminology to absolutely get to than be completely and utterly ghosted.
Yeah.
Because to be ghosted is rude, it's disrespectful, and it's very frustrating. There has to be a level of decorum, because I think that's what people remember.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is offer a service where I will answer all inquiries. I will show you the respect that you deserve. And I will try and make it work for you. Of course, not every single case is going to work out. Of course not. That's just the nature of business. But I will do my best. If people come to me and they're looking for something, they're looking for an answer, or they want a quote, or they want to jump on a Zoom to chew the fat about the services that I provide, I'm going to go out of my way to do that for them. Because I sometimes think that PR gets a bad name, and I don't like that. I'll give you an example. When I was working in Singapore, we wanted to do a shoot at Bayern Munich, and the PR people there could not have been more helpful. They were absolutely fantastic to deal with, and they bent over backwards to help us.
Yeah.
I have gone to a football club closer to home on more than one occasion, and I've been ghosted on more than one occasion. And all I'm doing is making a request. And this football club that I have gone to are nowhere near the levels of Bayern Munich. Nowhere near the levels of Bayern Munich. And the attitude from certain individuals, and it's not just this football club closer to home, it's football clubs that I've dealt with all over the world, and people that I've had to deal with all over the world, not just in football, but in music as well, is the attitude's all wrong. You're in PR for a reason. It's called public relations.
Yeah.
Please remember that terminology. Relations, public. It's not rocket science, is it? So I'm slightly trying to change the narrative. People will probably think I'm being completely overly ambitious, but I like being overly ambitious. So I'm gonna do it differently.
Brilliant.
Hopefully.
Yeah. No, I mean, you've been very approachable anyway. Like, I remember I just dropped you like a message, and I thought, because I've been obviously followed your content for a long time and things, and I just thought, oh, you'd be a great guy to get on, and you came straight back to me. You just asked a couple of questions. You said, yeah, I'd love to get involved. So I can vouch for you personally that, when you do send you a message, you do get back pretty quick. So I appreciate that. Putting your PR hat on, what communication skills do you think young professionals now most need to develop today?
You have to give clear and precise instructions all the time. Don't confuse your communication. If people come to you and say, for example, can you just clarify this for me? Just do it, but be firm. People need to know exactly what's expected of them. Transparency is absolutely vital. So just get the job done. But clear and precise instructions is key. Because if you don't give that type of instruction, all you're going to do is confuse the matter. And there's nothing worse when you think you've been given a task, but you're not 100% sure about it. You may be too embarrassed to go and ask for clarification. You may be too afraid to go and ask for clarification because you don't know what sort of reaction you're going to get. So to stop any of that, the person that is communicating the instructions, it's their responsibility to make sure that the person knows exactly what they're doing. So be completely transparent, be clear, and be precise.
Very good advice. And I think my last question I just want to ask you, Ally, is what's next for you then? What can we expect from ABtv or your consultancy in the year ahead? What can we expect?
So at the moment, I am putting all my efforts into building my PR and communications company. We're just trying to build the business. I'm very fortunate that I've already taken on a couple of clients, which I'm extremely grateful for. So that's going very well. I'm really pleased about it. I've held a number of very good and informative meetings with potential clients as well. So hopefully we can maybe deliver one or two of those. So it's all about building the business for me at the moment. Plus also, I'm now very conscious that I'm coming up to my 4th full season on ABtv. So it's now time to start shaking things up, give it a new look, improve the service, start to give people more content. It's challenging because of where I live geographically to make the type of content that people really want. But again, I have to be very conscious that I have to make my content within the parameters of legality. Everything that I do on my channel is 100% legal. So because I've got my responsibility to my sponsors to do that. So I have to be very careful about what I put out, when I put it out. I would like to increase the volume of content. So I would like to increase the number of shows that I'm putting out as well. So finding that balance between building a business with my PR and also building what is now a business with ABtv and the Accidental Pop Star, I just have to find that balance. And then obviously I've got my life balance as well to consider. So I've got my children to look after. I've got my responsibility for my children. And to be honest with you, I couldn't be happier at the moment, Ross. Everything is great at the moment. It really is. I'm really excited about the future. My illness has given me a new appreciation for life. I know it's an old cliche, and forgive me, I don't mean it to sound cheesy, but it really has. Because it has made me completely rethink my life. That like today, a guy that I knew just died suddenly. John Reid, who was one of our writers and vocalists with Bad Boys Inc., very famous Scottish vocalist and singer-songwriter, passed away today, age 61, just suddenly. And I just couldn't believe it. And I only spoke to him via Instagram a few days ago just to catch up, to say hi. Now he's gone. And it just makes me think that you only get one shot at this. So you've got to try to use whatever tools you have disposable to make it work for you. I understand life gets in the way, of course it does, but don't ever stop life getting in the way of what you want to achieve. If you set a goal and you set an ambition, go and find it. Don't wait for the phone to ring. Go and get it yourself, because nobody's going to get it to you. No one's going to give it to you. Everything that I've had to do in my life, I've had to get myself. Yeah. And I'm doing exactly the same now. I'm not waiting for the phone to ring because I know it won't ring. Yeah. So if I want something, I have to go and get it myself. I'm working on a project now that I'm hoping I can launch in the next few months. Mm-hmm. But I've had to go and get it. Yeah. I've had to chase it. I've had to be the one that's had to be proactive to make it work. So that's also advice that I would give to people. If you have a goal, if you have an ambition, don't let anything stop you from doing it. Nothing.
And what a great way to end the questions. No, Ally, I mean, thank you. I think, from the interview today, the story there is that there's no perfect career, is there?
No, not at all.
It can be chaotic, it can be brilliant, but starting over, it's not a failure, and it shouldn't be seen as that. And experience doesn't expire, as I always like to say too. So, I mean, I think for everyone that's been listening tonight, or if you're watching it on playback, who does feel stuck, uncertain, or like their real career probably hasn't started yet, I mean, I would certainly recommend rewinding this episode. I mean, I know I certainly will, because there's a lot of good, little nuggets of information there I was wanting to take notes on, or watching it back later. I mean, you just heard what it looks like to sort of keep moving forward, and even when the map disappears. So I just want to kind of say as well, follow Ally on YouTube on ABtv, and I'll just put his web address up here as well, such as the new business there. So check out his PR work at ally-begg-pr.com. And Ally, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. And
thank you, mate.
Thank you for coming on and telling us your story. It's been really good. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me on, Ross. I've loved it. Really have. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you, mate.
Yeah, and don't be a stranger, okay?
No, I won't, mate.
Thanks again. Wow, like that was brilliant. I really enjoyed that tonight, and I also really enjoy his regular episodes on ABtv. So do make sure that you go and check them out, especially if you're an Aberdeen supporter. And to finally interview myself and hear his story has been a really good privilege. So with AYP, what's happening next? Well, remember, as always, keep an eye out for the next AYP Live via our socials. And if you want to get involved as a person I want to interview, or you want to join me as the person that's interviewing, do give us a shout at info@aypgroup.co.uk. Now, our next in-person event, I'll just get the details up there. This is going to be getting launched tomorrow, which is Tuesday, and that is a whiskey tasting. And it's going to be our in-person event. And that'll be an opportunity to try 4 excellent drams for the competitive price point of £30 a head. And it's going to be in collaboration with Mike Stewart from the Inverurie Whisky Shop. And it'll be hosted at the Aberdeen Science Centre on Constitution Street from 7 p.m. on the 26th of June. Now, probably my artwork behind will be a bit of a giveaway, but unfortunately I won't be able to attend. But you'll be in very safe hands with Mike as he takes you on a brilliant tasting journey. And you'll also have the opportunity to buy the bottles on the night as well. So we'll be also launching a certain AYP awards again, but there'll be more on that coming up in the next few weeks. So do keep subscribing to our socials to be kept up to date on what is going on. And as always, this has been AYP Live, and I would say stay curious, back yourself, and of course, we'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to Aberdeen Young Professionals. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more events. Want to join us in person? Visit www.aypgroup.co.uk to find out what's next. See you there.